She never loved you. Not in the way you hoped. Not in the quiet way you imagined when you replayed her voice in your head at night. She loved the feeling of being seen through your eyes, the reflection of herself that you painted with your devotion, the version of her that only existed when you looked at her like she was rare, sacred, untouchable. You were her mirror, her stage, her proof that she was worthy of attention, power, and possibility. But love demands surrender, and she never surrendered anything. She only collected your energy, your time, your belief, the way you studied her as if she held the map to your future. That became her fuel. You thought you were winning her, but she was quietly winning herself. Every moment with you was a transaction disguised as intimacy. You gave her validation, and she gave you hope. You thought the balance was love. It wasn't. It was leverage. She was leveling up through your devotion, rising one step higher each time you forgave her distance, excused her silence, or mistook her coldness for mystery. She watched you fall deeper, not because she wanted you, but because your fall was proof of her value. Your pain was evidence that she mattered, and in a world where everyone competes for attention, she used your emotions as currency. You thought your loyalty would earn you her heart, but loyalty doesn't impress someone who feeds on control. She didn't want to be loved. She wanted to be admired, envied, desired, but never possessed. You became her story of transformation, the phase before her next version, the lesson she would never admit you taught her. You were the man who helped her believe she could do better, not because you failed her, but because you made her feel powerful enough to leave. And when she finally did, you mistook it for loss. But it was simply the moment she no longer needed your reflection to see herself clearly. She leveled up, and you broke down. That was always the silent exchange. You built her wings while she watched you fall, and somewhere between her gratitude and your heartbreak, she convinced herself that it was never love, just evolution. You believed it was love because it felt like gravity. The way she looked at you, the softness in her voice, the small confessions whispered like promises. It all seemed too real to be strategy. You mistook her fascination for affection, her dependence for vulnerability, her attention for care. But she was never lost in you. She was studying you. She learned your weaknesses like a language, understood your needs before you spoke them, and used that understanding as her quiet form of control. You wanted to believe she was different, that what you saw in her eyes was truth and not calculation, because the idea that someone could mirror your emotions so perfectly, only to weaponize them later, felt impossible. But that's what the illusion does. It cloaks self-interest in romance, manipulation and tenderness. You were addicted not to her, but to the feeling of being chosen. You saw her approval as redemption. Every time she smiled at you, it healed something old and unseen. Every time she pulled away, it triggered the hunger to prove your worth. You began to confuse suffering with depth, thinking that the chaos meant passion, that her distance was just fear. But she was never afraid of you. She was afraid of being ordinary, and you became her ladder out of ordinariness. You offered stability, and she used it as momentum. You gave her safety, and she used it to explore her ambition. You thought you were building a bond. She was building an escape route. And every compliment, every reassurance, every act of love you gave her became another brick in her foundation for the next chapter of her life, one that no longer included you. Still, you clung to the illusion. You told yourself she cared, that she just needed time, that one day she'd come back different. But people don't return when they've already extracted the value they came for. She left not because you lacked something, but because she had taken enough. You were never meant to be her forever. You were the bridge she had to cross to become the person she wanted to be. And that realization, though cruel, is the first crack in the fantasy you built around her name. It starts with silence, not the peaceful kind that settles between two people who understand each other, but the heavy kind that exposes how fragile everything has become. Her replies slow down. Her eyes don't search for yours anymore. The warmth that once lived in her voice turns mechanical, rehearsed. You start to notice the little things, the forced laughter, the distracted glances, the way she's always somewhere else even when she's right beside you. You feel the distance growing, but you tell yourself it's just a phase. You blame stress, timing, Anything but the truth that's already whispering in the back of your mind. She's detaching. The connection you thought was unbreakable begins to feel staged. Like a performance she's tired of giving. And when you reach out to pull her back, she offers sympathy instead of love. You can sense it, the pity in her tone, the exhaustion in her presence. She's not fighting for the relationship anymore. She's managing your emotions while planning her exit. The small reassurances that once comforted you now sound like distractions. You start to see patterns you ignored. How her interest peaks when others are watching. How her affection returns when you pull away. How her tears appear right when you start to move on. It's not connection, it's control. You realize she never wanted to lose you, only to outgrow you. She needs you as evidence that she's evolving, as proof to herself that she's no longer who she used to be. But you start to feel hollow, like a supporting character in her story of self-discovery. Every effort you make to fix things only deepens your despair because she no longer responds to love. She responds to power. And the more you try to hold on, the more she pulls away. Not out of cruelty, but out of superiority. She's already rewritten the narrative. You're the chapter she's outgrown, the man who helped her find herself, the emotional stepping stone she'll never credit, but will always remember. That's when the cracks turn into fractures. The illusion begins to crumble, not with a loud betrayal, but with a quiet realization. She stopped seeing you as someone to love and started seeing you as someone she used to need. There comes a night when you finally stop pretending, when her absence feels heavier than her presence ever did. When you look at the messages, the photos, the memories, and they stop feeling sacred. They start feeling staged. You begin to see it all for what it was. The performance, the manipulation, the quiet extraction of your love until nothing was left to give. You replay every moment, trying to find the turning point, but there isn't one. The collapse doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, invisible, disguised as normalcy. It's in the unanswered texts, the excuses that feel rehearsed, the eyes that never meet yours with the same fire. And when the end finally comes, it's not with a scream, but a shrug. She leaves gracefully, maybe even kindly. And that's what hurts the most. She doesn't destroy you with rage. She dismantles you with indifference. You were prepared for a fight, not for silence. You thought she'd look back, hesitate, falter, but she doesn't. She walks away lighter, as if a weight has been lifted, and you realize you were the weight. All the love, all the devotion, all the sacrifice, it wasn't shared. It was consumed. You gave and she grew. You stayed and she evolved. You believed in the story while she was already writing a new one. And when she posts her first picture after the breakup, smiling in a way that feels foreign, it hits you. She's not pretending anymore. She's free. Not from love, but from you. And in that moment, you understand the depth of her detachment. You were never her ending, only her transition. The version of her that loved you was temporary, constructed from her insecurities, her need to be seen, her hunger for validation. Once she got what she needed, that version of her no longer existed. You try to hate her, but you can't, because part of you still believes the illusion, still hopes that somewhere inside her, the girl you loved still exists. But she doesn't. She became someone new the moment she realized she could. And as you sit in the silence she left behind, you feel it. The slow collapse of everything you thought love was. The ruin doesn't come from her leaving. It comes from realizing she was never really there. At first, you call it heartbreak. But heartbreak fades. This doesn't. This lingers like a shadow, like something unfinished. You start to understand that what you lost wasn't just a person. It was the illusion of being needed. You begin to see how much of yourself you gave away in the name of love. How much of your worth became tied to her validation. You thought you were loving her, but you were really chasing yourself through her eyes, desperate to feel enough. And now, without her, you face the emptiness you've been avoiding. It's not just loneliness, it's exposure. You see how easily love becomes addiction, how affection turns into dependence, how devotion can blind you to exploitation. You remember the way you tolerated indifference because you feared abandonment. You remember the way you apologized for things you didn't do, just to keep the peace. You remember the nights you stayed awake, analyzing her every word, hoping to decode a truth that was never there. and slowly, the truth starts to hurt less and reveal more. You realize she didn't break you. She revealed you. She forced you to confront the parts of yourself that settled for being used. The part that believed love must be earned through pain. That's the reckoning. Understanding that you weren't betrayed by her, but by your own illusions. You gave your loyalty to someone who treated it as leverage, and now you're left questioning your own reflection. You thought love was sacrifice, but real love doesn't drain you to prove its depth. It builds you quietly. It doesn't ask you to shrink, to chase, to bleed. And yet, you keep replaying it. Not because you miss her, but because you miss who you thought you were when you loved her. That version of you, the hopeful one, the believer, the dreamer, feels gone. But maybe this is where you begin again. Maybe the pain isn't punishment, but purification. Maybe she was the mirror that shattered, so you could finally see yourself without distortion. You start to accept that she leveled up by using you, but you might rise by understanding why you let her. The reckoning is not revenge. It's recognition. It's the moment you stop asking why she didn't love you and start asking why you thought that was love at all. The world doesn't stop when she leaves. It keeps spinning, indifferent but sharper somehow. You begin to notice how easily people rewrite stories once you're no longer part of the script. Friends who once admired your relationship now speak of it like a warning. They say they saw the signs. They say you gave too much. They say she always had that look, the one of someone already half gone. And when you scroll through her new life, you see the evolution, the filtered smiles, the captions about growth and self-love, the veiled references to toxic energy and outgrowing old versions. You recognize yourself in those words, not as the hero, but as the ghost she had to escape. You've become the symbol of her progress, the necessary heartbreak that made her glow. People applaud her for moving on, for thriving, for choosing herself. No one sees that she didn't heal from you. She fed on you. She took the pieces of your devotion and built her new identity with them. And you, left in silence, become invisible. The one who gave, who endured, who tried, reduced to a lesson in someone else's story. The social mirror reflects back a version of her that seems radiant, empowered, untouchable. And beside it, your reflection looks small, weak, forgotten. You start to wonder if love always ends this way. One person rising from the ruins, while the other drowns in the dust. You watch how people reward attachment, how they call it strength, how vulnerability is mocked until it's repackaged as self-discovery. You realize the world doesn't mourn men like you. It studies you. You become a case study in emotional miscalculation, the man who cared too much, the fool who believed too deeply. And yet, buried beneath the humiliation, there's something pure. Because while she mastered the art of appearances, you learned the weight of truth. You learned that love without reciprocity is a slow kind of death, but it leaves you honest. And honesty, in a world addicted to illusions, is rare. So you stop chasing narratives. You stop defending your side. You let her have the spotlight, the followers, the validation. Because in the quiet shadow where no one claps, you begin to see the one thing she'll never face. The emptiness that follows every performance once the applause fades. There's a strange silence that follows the collapse, one that doesn't come from her absence, but from the loss of who you were when she existed. You look in the mirror and see a version of yourself you don't recognize, not because you've changed, but because she stripped away the parts of you that once gave you meaning. You used to be the man who believed in love, who believed in effort, who believed that if you gave enough, someone would stay. Now you're haunted by hesitation. Every gesture feels dangerous. Every new connection feels like a test you're doomed to fail. You find yourself analyzing faces, tones, silences, searching for hidden motives where there may be none. You've inherited her distrust, her cynicism, her cold precision. She infected you with the very armor that once protected her. And now you wear it too. You stop speaking from the heart because it feels naive. You stop showing emotion because it feels weak. You start to play the same game you once despised. Measured replies, detached energy, calculated distance. You tell yourself you're protecting yourself, but you're really erasing yourself. You become the thing you never wanted to be, emotionally untouchable. And while the world might call it strength, you know it's not. It's residue. It's the ghost of the pain that taught you to hide. People notice it. They say you've changed. They say you're colder now, quieter. They don't know it's not transformation, it's loss. You lost the innocence that made love possible. You lost the softness that made connection beautiful. She took more than your time. She took the unguarded version of you that believed love was safe. And even when someone new tries to reach you, you can't fully open. You give half of yourself, hold back the rest, and call it balance. You no longer chase love. You test it, doubt it, dissect it until it dies in your hands. And yet, deep down, beneath the layers of cynicism, a small part of you still aches for what was real, for what could have been if love didn't have to hurt to feel alive. But that version of you, the open, trusting, vulnerable man, feels like a memory now. She leveled up, but you disappeared. And what's left behind isn't heartbreak anymore. It's identity loss, a quiet, irreversible kind of death. One day, the ache softens, not because you've forgotten, but because the truth finally settles where it belongs. You see it now with clear eyes, stripped of emotion, stripped of longing. She never loved you, not because you weren't worthy, but because she didn't know how. Love was never her destination, it was her disguise. She was chasing power, not connection. Validation, not intimacy. She used your heart as a stepping stone to reach the version of herself she couldn't find alone. And though it broke you, it built her. That's the paradox you must learn to live with, the idea that your pain became her progress. But that's not where your story ends. Because every illusion that shatters leaves behind a truth too pure to ignore. You realize now that you were never destroyed. You were stripped of delusion, of dependency, of the need to be chosen to feel valuable. You finally understand that love is not measured by how much you're willing to lose, but by how much you're willing to see clearly. And clarity is brutal. It exposes everything. It shows you that most people don't love. They attach, they use, they consume. But in surviving that truth, you become something stronger, something quieter. You stop chasing understanding from those who only ever saw you as a means to an end. You stop romanticizing pain. You stop mistaking intensity for depth. You begin to rebuild, not to prove anything, but to feel whole again on your own terms. Because the real leveling up, the kind that lasts, isn't hers. It's yours. It's the moment you reclaim your reflection from her eyes and see yourself without distortion. You realize you were never too much, never not enough. You were simply the mirror she couldn't bear to face for long. And as she moves on, chasing her next version, you remain where it all began, in the quiet aftermath, standing among the ruins, but finally unafraid to see what's left. Because what's left is real. What's left is yours. And that, in the end, is the only kind of love that survives. The kind you find after the illusion burns, when there's nothing left to prove, and everything left to understand.